vayan sentando, por favor, gracias. Anoche, volviendo al hotel, me encontré a unos cuantos a la 1:30, 2 de la madrugada, jugando al CTF del Overdrive, alguno como este. Sí, sí. Bueno, os recuerdo cómo podemos hacer el evento.
All right. So thank you very much to the sponsors, to Telefonica and 11 Path. They've been working, helping us since the beginning, as well as Orange. So the people sitting on the first rows are sponsors of the 3 rooms. Telefonica and Checkpoint may be only interested in the security room, but they have increased the funding and they have also sponsored the other 2 rooms. CNN is the platinum sponsor. That means that it's sponsor of both events, the Madrid and Valencia one. It's very difficult, would be very difficult to have the Valencia event had not been well for them. And the other sponsors are called sponsors of a specific room. The first row, those sponsor the security rooms, and the other ones, the sponsor DevOps. You know that it is very important room for us because we would just want to have the full cycle. So we just want that room to be there, and then Capgemini, Davidis, Kaspersky, Prosegur, Deloitte, and Security Sentinel, and White Security are silver sponsors. These are the only, well, they sponsor the White Rabbit room. So congratulations again to the White Rabbit people. And Jumosa, you know that we have a very, can I say, familiar relationship with them. We are good friends. So I would encourage you to talk to them for bounties, exploits, etc. So Jose, thank you very much for being here. Your presentations are always wonderful, so please introduce yourself.
Vale.
So today we'll be here with you. My name is Jose Selvi. I am a principal penetration tester and security researcher. Well, probably some of you have met me before, have attended some of my workshops or presentations. I was about to say, well, that I have or have had a blog because I don't feed it very often. Well, still the name of it is pentester.es. So I just don't want to waste any more time on that. And I'm going to take a step forward and kind of spoil the last part of my presentation. So what I will be telling you, well, it was about me discovering a number of things. Then I sent it out to a couple of bug mountains, and well, they fixed it both on Facebook and Dropbox. I sent it out to other parties, but they decided not to fix it. So at the end of my presentation, by the time we will have seen everything, you have seen the link between the different pieces, you will see where I sent the results of my research and the experience that I had with it. It was my first experience with Bug Mountain, but because before that I was doing pen testing. So what I say, I'm new into the field of bug mountains, and I haven't sent out many things there. All right, so how does this story start? Okay, the story starts traveling to a remote country. I was going there with a colleague. We were there to carry out an audit. So a remote country where everyone drives faster than myself. So we visited a client. We were there to audit a number of apps and devices, and some of the application was admin console, and I found something similar to this. Okay, well, this is fictional, okay. So the admin panel had kind of a search box where you could look up users. I guess that they were company users, and I guess that it was linked to a directory. What caught my attention was that the language that you could use for your search was tremendously rich. You could look up a name of a person, but you could also specify and say, okay, find all the names starting with A or including letter T. Okay, so the kind of search that you could do was a very complex one. So therefore, when crime came out, so how many of you are aware of crime? Well, few people. How many of you have exploited crime? Well, less people then. As I say, crime came to mind, and now I'll tell you why. Crime is an attack which is about extracting information through a side channel. What is a side channel? Side channel, well, when people talk about or try to explain side channel, they use the example of the Pentagon and the number of pizzas that were ordered by night. I have an alternative example to explain it. Imagine the politician having a car and a home, okay? So the next day, he's got a car and a home. And the next day, he's got a home and a house, a sports car, holiday home, a castle, and a private jet. Well, what happened there? Well, we haven't seen the envelope with the cash in it, but obviously there's been some cash around. So, okay, the channel in this case would be the property of this politician. Okay, this is what side channel is about. So, meaning that you don't know what has happened, you haven't seen what has happened, but something in the environment tells you that something has happened. And that gives you know-how as to, or helps you understand kind of what has happened. So if we extrapolate that to our world, so for instance, when you click on the browser, you ask a browser to visit this website. First of all, it connects to see what is the IP, then it logs on to that IP, and then it brings with it an HTML code, which is renderized in your computer, to put it simple, and then your computer, again, finds the resources needed to make a render and to show you scripts, images, CSS, you name it. If you open up a sniffer and you take a look at that on the network, you will see something like that on the screen. Well, these data are encrypted, and I say, well, we cannot really see anything on those TLS. Well, this is not entirely true. You cannot really see data, but you can see other things. And that has been used to come to or structure channels, such as this one. For instance, you can see the name, the DNS, okay? You can also see the IPs. You can also see the certificates. And when you see a package, which is kind of application data, package is a package containing encrypted data. So for instance, if you see packages that go from a high port to a low port, that would be a HTTP request, and if from low to high, often this is a response package. And you can also see the size of it. Size is important because size is what's been used in crime as well as in other type of side channels. Therefore, which is our attack scenario? So in a couple of minutes I will tell you what crime did, and the attack scenario that I will describe later on is not crime, but it is very similar. So, scenarios as follows. Victim logs on to a website, and then we are in a situation where we can see the traffic. We can see the traffic and take action over the traffic. Taking action over the traffic, well, I have promised before when I said I am in the middle, so all the back mountains think that you did burp, that you did a certificate and you broke the TLS. When I say in the middle, well, you cannot really touch the TLS. Well, if the user accepts that the game is over, there is nothing else you can do. So we are saying that the user does not accept it, doesn't get any warning, there's nothing. You are in the middle, and even if you cannot really touch anything which is layers above TLS, you can touch whatever is below the layers below TLS. So if you haven't used crime before, you haven't read about it, you can do this because this is simple. Crime, well, they used to compile or compress the addresses and then to encrypt them. So if you added an information controlled by the attack, you could start playing with this type of zipping. So if you zip something and the information existed, the resulting size will be smaller. So this is what I did. I did a cut and then gzip. This is a simple example. WCC helps you count the number of characters, 310 bytes. And then when you start trying, okay, you try A, and then that increases by 1 because the string that I'm adding does not exist anywhere. The same goes with B. When I insert C, then it becomes smaller. Why is that? Well, what I'm writing, which is controlled by the attacker, is similar to the session cookie. Every time I test it, I get to see whether the package is smaller or bigger, so therefore the attacker can see whether he's getting it right with the cookie data. Okay, and then he just takes over. And that was crime, that was not me, okay? But still, I couldn't help thinking about crime when I was making the audit. So crime used to do that with the requests. And then there was a data breach, okay, that did exactly the same thing with the response, okay? It did not use the cookie, but uses RSS. So I thought about crime because I do something similar, but with the response package. So what came to mind? Can you remember that form from where you could make your search? So it means that if you look for something, well, if you look for something that does not exist, okay, so the answer will have a number of bytes. But when you look for something that does exist, the response will have a higher number of bytes because, well, results take up some space. And then when I saw that, I went around it, and I said, well, I think that could be expressed in the same manner than crime and breach. And I said, okay, I'm going to test it. I said, okay, if I try a letter and then I get 100 Ks back, then I try G, I get 100 bytes back, and then I try H and I get 200 Ks back, which is the right letter, this one. Isn't it? You can do that by monitoring the traffic, monitoring the size of the packages coming and going. And as I said, I was working on a project for one client. And you know that pen testers, when we are carrying out projects, we are always short for time, we are always pressed for time. So we are all very much ashamed of the code that we use when we are exploiting something for the first time. But in this case, as I am going to disclose it, I'm going to show it. I know that this is like very but I did a PHP, I tested it, and then it had sleep, and I used to load it, and it came in with images. The first image did a sleep of 1 second, the second image did a sleep of 2 seconds, and each sleep tried a different character. And then there was a sniffer to identify whether the fifth connection was the biggest, and therefore that told me that that was the number 5 was the red letter. Well, we showed that to the client, and the client accepted it as such. Well, then the project was over. It came out in some pen testing before. I reported it, but I froze it. So when I visit a client, when I'm working with a client and I find something which is special, I just kind of freeze it for a year or so, because I don't think it is fair to publish it the next day. Okay, so if you don't publish his name, as I say, I put it aside, I leave it there for some time, and I say, okay, I will go back to it after some time, okay, and we'll talk about it. And then something happened, which was the following, okay? A year later, this presentation was giving out the black hats in the US, and when I read it, I said, oh, shit. That was my finding. So this man did what I did, but he did it with finding that on the network. He referred to it as timing attack. So when the website from where he forced the browser to make conditions, he measured the time, the loading time, which should be more or less equivalent to the size of the package. Anyhow, I looked for the tool that he used, but he hadn't published the tool that he had used. And this is often what you find for side channels. Sometimes the code is not published, but he did. So I couldn't really find any tool that will help me try this again in a different way. And therefore, I decided myself to build a tool. And this tool was named as follows. Oh, sorry, I was about to take a picture, so too late. So I just wanted to call it FIESTA, and then I just found the words, okay, to call it FIESTA. So it is in GitHub. It is written in Python. I'm a bit angry at Python and I want to start programming in Go, so probably I will change it to Go. Alright, so this tool works very similar to Crime. That is to say, there are two parts to it. One part is kind of a web server, it's a JavaScript. Actually, could be injected in any HTTP page which is not encrypted. You could insert it inside. The user would not have to visit any link or open up any link. Just by browsing it, it will be injected. And then the JavaScript, okay, connects to the vulnerable sites and then takes a look at the size. Then the modules talk to each other. And then you can see which is the, you just wait until you find the right character, okay? One of the things that I did was just to include the possibility of touching or changing lots of parameters in the config module. And I said, well, let's try to do something more generic. So this is what config file looks like. So you choose where you want the connection to make the relay, where is the injection point, and what you want to look for. So term is a fixed term, and the chart set is what it looks after the term, okay? Looks for after the term. Johansson would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'll show you a demo. Okay, so this is the website that I mentioned before. So this is the page that will load the JavaScript, but we could inject it when the user is browsing, so that he wouldn't notice anything, he wouldn't get to see any odd site. Okay, I'll show it to you and I'll explain it. So it will start loading. Hopefully it will start loading. I'll wait for a few seconds. Okay, you see? Loads once, twice. So what it's doing is the same that I told you for the script PHP. It opens up many images, okay? Each of the images sends out requests to the other sites, okay? So it extracts. So if you notice the chart set will be for email. When I say the fixed term is the @ sign, and then this will extract the letters on the right, and then when it finishes that up, we go to the letters on the left, okay? And when it finishes, I say, okay, this is the email address that I found. Okay, pretty, @ sign, zombie, and this should be around here, okay? Pretty zombie. This is encrypted and it has taken it out from here. And it will continue taking out everything up until it finishes. If it says, okay, it is over, you leave it there for some time, okay, continues to take things out. So this may sound a bit weird. I was hopeful that it would fail, because I could tell you about the reason for failure. So let us try to screw it a bit so that we can see when it fails, why it fails. Okay, has failed already. Well, notice that I am making these, well, monitoring is. I'm taking a look at the traffic. But if we have the traffic of JavaScript and the legit traffic of the sites, it may be the case that I don't know what is happening. So it has a heuristics there that, for instance, it sees if I tried out 10 and then finds out 15 connections, I say, oh, something has gone wrong, then it stops, okay, wait for 5 seconds, cleans the buffer, and tries again. However, it may also be the case that it gets a wrong letter, wrong character, so may repeat it again to make it sure, but it will just take longer time. Okay, so another one, Sophie @ veryhotmail.com. Okay, so this is the tool. And therefore, what are the problems that I encountered? I found that many of the sites do not load data when you load the main website, but do it later on. And that request sometimes goes through a token, so therefore you cannot call it direct. So if you take a look at the config file of the tool, you will see lots of possibilities. I said, okay, you can go and say, okay, instead of checking the main website, take a look at the third connection, okay? There are a number of fields you can play around with. You cannot do it by loading an image, but you have to do it by loading an iframe, because you have to facilitate rendering, but you can do that in practice. Another problem that I found is that many websites nowadays use HTTP2. So when you want to get to the third connection, you are in trouble. You know, HTTP2 works in a synchronous manner, so it is very difficult to see the response that is matched to the request. Okay, so it sends out all the responses together, so loads HTML, and then HTTP2 sends all the connections, all the images, everything, and then they come back through the application data, which is encrypted, that it is marked with an ID, and when you get them back, maybe disarranged because I have a problem because I don't know which request matches which response, okay? And then I said, okay, careful, okay, slow. Okay, FIESTA. Basically, that's the following for you. Because it is synchronous, means that I can send out that request, okay, one request, and stop the other two, because they are not synchronous. Because I am in the middle, so I send out the first request, I stop the other two requests, and I wait for that request to be finished. Then I move on to the next one, I wait to have the response to it. So therefore, well, I refer to this option as multiplex. So this is an example about how FIESTA works. On the left we have HTTP.1, it loads in 4 or 5. This is because browsers use more than one thread to make the loading. So HTTP2, we see this loading in chunks, okay? And then below we have HTTP2 and FIESTA. It does it one by one, loads the image, then I wait for you to give me a response. So this is a good option to, in HTTP2, to target the third connection, the fourth connection, you name it. Okay, so when I had this, and I said, wonderful. Okay, then I will give a presentation about it. And I said, I'm not going to give a presentation and to use the examples of the clients that I audited. And I said, okay, I'm going to take Alexa, and I'm going to start try to find who's got a similar form to this. It took me some time, okay, and it was one of the most disappointing experiences in my life. Because at the end of the day, many of these sites have lots of JavaScript generated dynamically that changes the size of it, and even the SSL packages are randomized, and it is much more difficult, and I don't like to lose. Oh, sorry, I'm not being accurate, okay? Actually, yes, there was one which I found that did that. That was HackerOne. It used to call JSON that takes data from the bounty that you have sent out, but they come with no token, so you can send a request as such with that JavaScript, and then you look for names of companies, of words. You can also look it up in a dictionary of vulnerabilities. You can see whether the person has reported that, to what company that was reported. So this is one of the ones. HackerOne, this is one of the ones that I tried, okay? So, and the address was this one on the screen. But as I said, I don't like to lose. And I say, no, surely I want to work with some of these, okay? Surely I will be successful. And I said, well, other than the size, and I tried to look for other things. And then I got a bright idea, and I say, okay, it loads an image per entry. I said, wonderful, I'm going to test it. Great, I will make a request that does not exist, and then I take my image. Okay, I make a request, okay, and then it loaded 2 pictures, my picture and another one, and the connections to bring photos back, we could see them on net, and I say, wonderful, I have an idea. Now, I know what I can do now. Notice the hostel it is connecting to here. So actually, images were loaded from a CND, no noise. Each connection brought an image. So the problem that I had with the images is that they go to cache. And I say, yes, I do the first test, and I will get the first letter, but how do I get the second letter? Because images are cached. Yes, images are cached if they reach the browser. If I see the request and then I drop it, and the response never gets to the browser, it will never be cached. The next time they try to load the image, well, they will try to load it again. So the only difference is that the browser uses it or tries it again, but it tries it only 3 times. So I say, okay, image will be, well, there will be 3 loading attempts, okay? So if I can see 3 loading attempts, it means that I got it right. And then another thing that happened, I say, well, the first time that I load it, if the user is using it, may have the images cached. And then I also noticed that these companies have CDNs around the world, and they deliver the image from the DNS which is closest to you. For instance, if you are in Europe, images are loaded from a server which is located in Madrid. But if you change the DNS resolution and you send it out to a server in the US, images are loaded from somewhere else and they are not cached. So if you play around with these 2 things, you can make the browser loading the images without caching them.
And in this fashion, we can set up the configuration file. We can do it this way. Before, it was images. I now have changed to open, control to open. That opens a window. I'll explain that in a minute. I'm saying that the oracle is the connections. Before I said it was the size, the number of connections, and the action is drop. Before it was relay. It would allow connections to go through. Now I drop the connections. I just count them. And the rest is basically the same.
Entonces os voy a explicar con esto.
So, with this idea, I went back to Alexa. I'll tell you what came out of this. Gmail was not filterable, but Inbox was. Inbox basically loads the emails for Gmail. Since Inbox loads an image with the avatar coming from the person that sends you the email, you do a search and you can see little things here and there. The stronger, the more powerful the browser is, the more the things you can find. Here you have to search word by word. For example, you wouldn't be able to extract a token like this because it's a full word, but you could search for the email address for that guy and then find in a dictionary the fact that someone is talking to someone else about these things. If this is details for a credit card, which go in blocks, 4-digit blocks, you could see that someone has sent their credit card details to someone else by email. There you go. The images. Google Drive. Same thing. What Google Drive does is to load a preview of the file. That preview, well, the connection is established if the search finds the file. Where Google Drive is similar, you need to search by words, as in Inbox. But now this indexes the contents of the files, even PDFs. You send a PDF with a credit card, it's in Google Drive. With this, you can extract the information. Or even a doc document with a password. It will extract all the contents within the file. In Dropbox, this was interesting because you don't have a preview of each file in Dropbox, but it doesn't make any difference because it shows you an image when it finds nothing. So it's the other way around. I send a request. If I get an image, it means that I've failed. If it doesn't load anything, I've done it right.
Y era igual que Gmail. Lo único es que en la versión...
So same as in Gmail. In the free version, it doesn't index the content, so you would need the pro version. As in Google, if you want to do the same as in Google Drive, extracting the contents from those files. What else do we have? Facebook. In Messenger. In Facebook Messenger, it's the same story. You have a search engine that loads the images for those people whose conversation fits the search that you have carried out. So you can search for words, you can search for topics, I don't know, politics or a certain political party, you do a word list. You cannot search for character by character. So, and you find out that someone is talking to someone else about these topics. And let me now show you the one for Google Contacts. And let us play some music. So that Roman fights with the people over at YouTube.
Me saca 1-1.
That's the one.
Creo que se ve el teléfono ahí abajo, o sea que podéis...
I think you can see the phone number down there. So wait and see if it catches that.
Bueno, ¿lo veis? ¿Me confirmáis que...
So you see that? Can you confirm it's the same?
Bueno, pues con todo esto yo os digo...
So I see all of this, and then I try and find out other things. I thought of sending this to the companies so that it could get fixed. If they give me money, fine, but that was not my goal. I felt encouraged to tell these companies. So my experience with bug bounties, it was the first time ever that I actually sent things to bug bounties. I have this idea in my mind that these things work this way. You send something, and whatever you send is rubbish for them most of the time. Then you have to make an effort to put together a compelling argument. It's complicated because these companies get a lot of rubbish. They have people at level 1 who are not the biggest experts in cybersecurity that you could find. And some things which are not as straightforward as what I've just shown are discarded right away. So it took me a while. Let me tell you the story. Google hasn't fixed it. this you've seen, what you've seen, you can do. They said they wouldn't fix it. They said that was a problem with my browser. If anyone understands that, I'd love an explanation for that. They just sent a reply saying, oh, that's a problem with your browser. Send it to the bug bounty for Chrome. I didn't send anything because it wasn't, I mean, this wasn't about sending things to different people, so I didn't send anything to anyone. And HackerOne, that was a funny thing. They said this is a duplicate from 2 years ago. Remember that the one from HackerOne had no images. It was the first attack that we saw before. So they gave me a link to the ticket where someone had already mentioned that since you don't have a token through the image, and they had told him, well, this is complicated. For some reason, in bug bounties, when you find the words man in the middle, well, you're almost rubbish by default. They don't seem to see any relevance in these things. So these two companies will not fix it. If they do fix it, tell me, because I'll claim my reward. Who fixed it? Facebook did. Dropbox fixed it as well. The first time I sent it, they said, well, man in the middle. And they said no. First time round. So I called Louise and I said, Louise, I think this should be fixed. Seriously. So he said, wait for me to get into my shift, I'll take a look at the ticket. So a couple of days later he wrote to me and said, I've had a look. He said, I've rewritten half of it. He said, what a load of rubbish. Now he gave me a really good explanation. He said, you focused on the side channel, and it was a first CRF. This is a CSRF. And I'm exploiting it this way. Well, so I told Louise, okay, I understand your approach, but anyway, I knew Louise, so he included a couple of comments. It went through. They got the green light, and they fixed it. And in Dropbox, these are the ones that responded most quickly. They actually requested information, they wanted additional details, I explained it to them. They told me it would take some time. They asked me, are you going to be presenting about this? Tell me about the dates, because we will have a plan in place to fix it. And then they fixed it. So Facebook and Dropbox are not vulnerable anymore. Google and HackerOne, well, they are. In theory, they won't be fixing it, based on what they told me. I was expecting everyone to fix it using a token, but Facebook did something else, which is also a good solution. When you search, when you do the search, if you're not already in the page, I mean you go straight into the search, you see a pop-up window. Are you sure you want to do a search? Well, if you link connections, the user will have to accept all of them, so I cannot do the requests the way I want it. So far so good. I'm in Prisagul Cybersecurity. We have a number of recruitment processes in place. If anyone is interested in sending us their CV, you can use this email address. And that was it from me. Thank you so much.
Voy a usar lenguaje técnico.
I'm going to use technical jargon. Bloody hell, this is amazing, man. Have you thought about using attacks with known text? For example, sending emails to someone with a certain subject, with a certain extension, and the same you did with Facebook. How about locating the whole thread that would describe the button? I'm just doing some brainstorming. Well, as it happens, with Facebook you can see the images. I don't see the content. I mean, that text box, I'm not intercepting it. I'm just seeing the images. Questions from the floor? Oh, by the way, talk to Fermin. I did. Questions? You're all stunned. Nothing? What size do you need for your own images? Is it an arbitrary size? I don't care. I don't mind. I drop it. Something like applus.something.com. As long as you control the domain where you are getting the request. It can be the minimum size, as long as you can do your count. Yeah, and don't rely only on the images. I think I called it resource load Bayside channel, something like that. I got hold of an image, but you can do it in different ways. You may load a script and get the data from somewhere. So this has to do with the behavior of the website. I'm going to ask you something a bit tricky. Do you want to talk about this in DEF CON, Black Hats and so on? Can I show you a video today? Thank you so much. This is killer stuff. Killer stuff, man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Jose.